Gina DeLuca here. All right, today I am going to be using some of this Little Piggy Pigments and some DecoArt, Americana Decor paints, and gonna have some fun. So, the colors that I have for my background slash base coat, I have Amsterdam Acrylics and Caput Mortum Violet. I have two This Little Piggy Pigments. Here I have Crescendo and Unicorn. And then I have three DecoArt things going on here. I have the Americana Decor Metallics in Amethyst, the Matte Metallics in Silver, and this last color here is a mix of the Satin Enamel, DecoArt Americana Decor Satin Enamel in Pure White, and Amsterdam Titanium White with the tiniest bit of Liquitex Basics Phthalo Blue. It is like less than a pea size and it gets very blue. The Phthalo Blue is a very strong pigment and you really just need a tiny bit if you just want to tint your paints. How these paints are mixed. The Amsterdam paints are very highly pigmented. So my typical 1 part paint to 2 parts Floetrol, you could do 3 parts Floetrol, even 4 parts, and still be okay. So I've probably done about 1 part paint to 3 to 4 parts Floetrol for this mix here. The pigments, the way I mix the pigments, I put on a mask. Number 1, wear a mask when you're working with pigments. Bits of it will become airborne. You can see it when you have studio lights. It's very evident. You might not notice it if it's not very bright, but little particulates become airborne. It floats around. It will get up into your nose. If it gets into your lungs, it is never coming out. So if you work with pigments a lot and you're not wearing a mask, you can really do some damage. So wear a mask. So I put a bit of the Jo Sonja gloss varnish in the bottom of the cup and I add the pigment and I mix it in just enough to make it wet and dissolve. And then I add some of the regular gel matte from Golden, matte gel. This dries clear, so does the Floetrol, but when it's in the cup, you know, it kind of has a milky appearance. So the colors will be more vibrant actually when this painting dries, just because of that. So I add some of this just to give it the consistency of a tube paint. And then I add the Floetrol to it. To that mix, I will do the 1 part paint to 2 parts Floetrol. And then I have the DecoArt. So I do half satin enamel, half regular paint. And I call that 1 part paint. So half this, that makes 1 part, to which I add 2 parts Floetrol. The consistency that we are working with, it is making a nice, thin, even stream off of my stick. It doesn't get thick and thin and thick and thin. And it is making a mound, but it disappears quickly. This is a 2 on my consistency scale. If you would like to know more about that, there should be a video that pops up somewhere over yonder. And it will be also in the description box. Below this video. Also in the description box you will find the links to my affiliate links and coupon codes for DecoArt and Fluid Art Company, where I got the Jo Sonja and This Little Piggy Pigments and the Amsterdam. So check out the description box, lots of information there. Before we get started, have you seen the Fluid Art inspiration cards? If you have, you can fast forward about a minute, but if you have not, what we have are 52 cards. There are 42 technique cards, and each technique card has an associated video here on YouTube that gives you all of the information that you need, the exact paint, brand, color, consistency, the recipe, of course, the technique, all of the things that I can't fit onto a card. This is a picture of the painting in that video. This box contains a tip for this particular technique, and here at the bottom you have the color palette that was used in this painting. And then these two boxes can be used together as the basis of a two-color palette, or you can build off of those colors. There are also 8 bonus color palette cards. Each one has 5 color palettes. You can use some of the colors, all of the colors, mix and match the bonus color palette cards with the technique cards, and you have more combinations than you could ever paint in a lifetime. These are available at my website, ginadeluca.net, and also at amazon.com. The first thing I'm going to do is put some paint in a cup. I always like to make sure I have enough for my pour. That was about... I meant to do 2 ounces. I did a little closer to 3.5, I think. And I'm going to do my best to reserve a bit in this cup to go on the top of my cup. All right, you will notice that I've already covered my edges. The reason that I do that is I mix my paints pretty thick and I'm using Floetrol. That combination can sometimes not give you the best coverage on the sides. So instead of having to come back later and touch the sides up or being forced to frame it because the sides aren't pretty, I just cover them first. And then I avoid having to mess with it later. And the reason that we lay down a base coat is because we want our paints to slide around easily and evenly on the canvas. If your canvas is dry, something has to stick to it first, and that will be your poured puddle. And it will be the edges of your poured puddle that will stick first. And the center of your poured puddle will roll over the edges, and sometimes the coolest stuff happens on the edges. This is one of the reasons why I use the same color for my background as I do my base coat. It allows me to use negative space if I so decide, but also another good reason to do that is you wind up with little bubbles in your base coat, and you do the best to so we wind up with, that was weird, wind up with little bubbles in our base coat, and we do our best to pop those, but sometimes there are some left. And what happens is when you torch your pour, you will wind up with little tiny bubbles, little tiny cells popping up in your painting. And if I were using a white base coat and there's no white in my painting, then I'm going to have little tiny white cells that stand out, and I'm going to feel like I need to fix those. So using the same color as something that is in my painting will make it so I don't have to necessarily do anything to fix it. So I like to troubleshoot before there's trouble. Okay. Going to pop these bubbles with old Bernie 2-time, never lights on the first try. Move this out of the way. All right, going to start with the Unicorn, or Crescendo, I'm sorry. Pouring from up high. I like to try to get these to sink and churn and blend when I'm doing a straight pour. If I am using more than one cell maker, I like to get this sinking, churning, blending thing going on because they will attach to each other and create some really cool 3D effects. Always check your consistency before adding to your cup. The sauce may thicken upon standing. Again, from up high. The plop is a good sound. That means it's probably going to make it to the bottom. Okay, and for the unicorn. The silver. And for the, let's see, the Satin Enamel blend, the color that I put in last will end up in the center of my painting, typically. A little bit of that ends up at the very bottom of the cup. And usually what ends up coming out of the cup last winds up becoming my focal point in the painting. All right, going to take a bit of this leftover. Still going to try to keep a little bit of this in case I need some zhuzhing up on the corners. The sides sometimes need it. One more pop of these bubbles. Before I pour. Okay. Am I just going to do a straight pour? I haven't done one of those in a long time. Usually I'm doing spirals or... I think, oh, well, let's see. Let's see what happens. Maybe just some occasional swirls. As I get towards the end of the cup, I will get closer to the canvas. This gives me more control. And that DecoArt, the Satin Enamel, did indeed end up at the bottom of my cup, so yay. Still coming out. Okay. Where's my little... Okay. Just going to touch up that center just a hair. Didn't like that dismount very much. That'll do. So you can see, I've already got some cells popping up. As I pop the bubbles, the bubbles that are lying in the layers underneath will bring up some paint. And the DecoArt paints dry matte. When they are used with a paint that is not matte, there is a hydrophobic effect that takes place. And get this cat hair. And it will push the paint away, giving you cells. And the longer I let this sit, the bigger the cells will get as it continues to push that paint away. So there's some really cool stuff happening here on the edges. I have to wait and see what happens with the rest of this center here. This may be a situation where maybe I want to keep my edges. I'm going to keep popping these bubbles, and you will see these little cells keep popping up. And they will continue to grow. I'm going to grab my corner catcher in case I need that. When you are lighting your torch, don't hold it straight over your canvas when you light it. Point it away from your canvas, because that first blast is really hot and you can scorch the paint. So you can see every time I use that torch, I get more little tiny cells popping up. And they grow. And so I like to let them, I say let the paint puddle percolate. I like to let the cells grow before I tilt it, because that will give me bigger cells and it really kind of gives that 3D effect that I love. Not sure. That was a new can of silver too. I'm surprised that didn't show up more. But sometimes there are surprises lying in wait once you start stretching as well. A lot of people get bored at this point and they're like, why don't you fast forward? Because I want you to know exactly how long I'm letting this sit. A lot of times people try these techniques and they aren't doing things exactly the same and wondering why they aren't getting the same results. If you are attempting one of these straight pours and it's not working out for you, A, are you using the exact same paints and pouring mediums? B, is your consistency thin enough? And C, are you letting it sit long enough to develop? The first time I got a Boulder cell pour, it was an accident. It was video number 16, and I was trying to recreate video 15 where I had some crazy results. That was the first straight pour using just Liquitex Basics paints, and the cadmium yellow light hue did some magical things. And so I tried to recreate it, but my torch wasn't working. So I walked into the other room to fix my torch, and I came back and it was like this. It was like crazy cells all over the place. And I was like, what? And then when I stretched it out, they were gigantic. And so that is how the Boulder cell was born. The Boulder cell was born. All right, so I'm gonna just come back in and touch up these edges because they can kind of set up a little bit, and then the paint won't run over the edge at an even rate. If the edge is dry, the paint, it will resist the paint rolling over. All right. Well, I think this is pretty good. Got a good amount of cells here to work with. Now the difference between this and how it looked when it first came out is very different. And if I had tilted right away, I would still get cells, but they would not turn into giant, juicy boulder cells like these are about to. Got some really cool blending going on in here. And I love what is happening here. So I am going to use my corner catcher. It's just a piece of cardboard that I have folded in half. And I will slowly let the paint roll to that corner. Now, slow and steady win this race. If you do it too quickly, the center of your pour will roll across the edges of your pour, just like if your canvas had no base coat. And you will lose some of that very cool stuff on the edges. Okay, now I'm going to bring this back. Okay. I like to bring the paint back to center before I change directions. Okay, I think I'm just going to hit this other corner. Actually, what I'm going to do, I have a bit of this left, and I'm just going to use this up, touch up these corners. So when this painting is just sitting and you're allowing your puddle to percolate, it can set up a little bit. Your base coat can set up a bit. So it doesn't hurt to just kind of refresh it and get out of there. To just zhuzh it up a little, give it a little extra juice to help it slide around easily. Again, kind of paying attention to the sides because they can set up very quickly and wind up being a pain in your booty. Okay, let me just give this another bubble pop where I just hit this canvas. Whatever that is, get off my painting. Gotcha. Schmutz. Get the schmutz as soon as you see it, because that can also cause you some headaches. Okay, continuing on. And sometimes it's so pretty and you think, God, I don't want to tilt this off. Wish I could just leave it the way it is. But you don't want your painting to crack because you have too much paint left on your canvas. Again, I'm bringing the weight of the paint back to center. The weight of the paint, the way you're going to find that is where your paint is moving the fastest. And if you keep an eye on that, you can really control the paint. You can see I'm almost making a corner here. And again, coming across, watching the weight of the paint. And letting that push the paint around. Okay, and now I will adjust for composition. So once again, bringing the paint back to center. And I don't like for my focal point to be dead center on a canvas that is not either square or round. I like for it to be a little off center. Kind of using the rule of thirds where I can. Okay. I think this is where I'm going to leave it. Got some really pretty things going on. This is going to be beautiful when it dries. You can see some of the pigments poking through and some of that blended in these cells. I would not be surprised if more cells pop up in certain areas. It's just kind of how straight fours work. They do tend to change a bit as it sits. I'll probably get more cells in these areas. I am not going to torch this anymore. I'm going to leave this be, and I'm going to let it do what it's going to do, and I will bring you in for a close-up. Back in a few. Okay, here it is. This has been sitting for a while. Did have some more of the purple cells pop up in these corners. They are some really cool multicolored cells. Some very cool Boulder cells going on. Some 3D action. Let me see if I can show you the shimmer of the piggies. Kinda showing up in between. It's really hard to pick up on camera. They are there. They're hard to see on camera. Really hard to see until it's like dried and varnished. Like there's lines going on in there, but I can't. Maybe you can see it a little bit. So the piggies are kind of lying in between the cells in a lot of places, but they've also blended with some of the cell makers. So there it is. Happy with this piece. It came out really pretty. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please do like, share, and subscribe. If you are subscribed, please make sure you click that bell so you receive notifications of new uploads. Check out the description box below for links to my PayPal tip jar if you feel so inclined, my website where you can find my art and music and the fluid art inspiration cards for sale. The cards are also available at Amazon. In the description box, you will also find links to my affiliates and coupon codes. DecoArt being one of the affiliates, and Fluid Art Company. Also in the description box, you will find the link to our Facebook group. Go make some art. Join us there. Post your masterpieces. Ask your questions. Get some inspiration. And is that it? I think that's it. I don't know. I always forget something here at the end. But there it is. I am happy with how this piece turned out. I hope you enjoyed. And I hope you have a beautiful day. Now go make some art.